Good afternoon, and welcome to what may or may not be a one off. A number of people encouraged me to go ahead and try recording a podcast because during the pandemic and still in recent months, I've really missed the conversation and camaraderie of gathering with other knitters to talk about yarn and projects, what we're working on, what we really want to work on, what's exciting us, and of course, the new things that we've gotten. So, much like other podcasts that I've watched recently, I'm going to start with finish objects and then talk about works in progress and then maybe stash acquisition. I recently started watching knitting podcasts because I didn't have an outlet for all of the yarny thoughts and things that come to me, and I just needed to feel like I was knitting with somebody. And Woolly Witchcraft said something similar in her first episode, and I kind of got the courage to go ahead and give it a try. So I might ramble, but at least I'm trying, and I'm going to put myself out there. So I'm Summer, and I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with my animals and my wonderful husband and 2 kids. So this, if it becomes a regular thing, may not be super frequent. I'll aim for at least every few weeks or monthly, but sometimes raising busy, tiny people gets in the way of all of the knitting and the other activities that I want to do as well. But I'm going to jump right into finish objects because I did have something come off the needles just this morning. I guess I should mention what I'm wearing. I made myself a Love Note sweater in January. I took a weekend trip with my husband, just the 2 of us, finally, and it was wonderful. And I spent most of the car ride knitting on this sweater, and it is the full length, so it hits right at my waistband. And then I did the sleeves a little bit shorter than the full length in my size calls for because I am only 5'1", and long things tend to overwhelm me, and this is a nice length for me. So it's just below the elbow, and it's super comfortable. It's very soft. The base yarn is Clark & L hand-dyed from Etsy, and then over the top of it, it's got Knit Picks Aloft silk mohair, and it kind of tones down some of the super bright green in the hand-dyed yarn underneath, having that nice fuzz of mohair over the top. And so I like the colors in this sweater. They're happy and springy, and even though it's super hot here today, I figured I'd wear it because I really, really love it. But just this morning, I finished a Love Note for my daughter. I did the 8 to 10-year-old size, but I did it longer than it calls for. It might even be longer than my sweater. I knit until I was worried that I might run out of the mohair. And I did that so that it would grow with her because it is generously sized through the body. I feel like she can continue to wear it until it becomes more of a crop sweater for her. So the sleeves are the length it called for, and they'll just end up being shorter sleeves as she gets older. You can see I still have my progress markers dangling from the sleeve because I really did just weave in the ends this morning. The base yarn, the fingering weight, is just the Manos del Uruguay Alegria in natural because this rainbow hand-dyed silk mohair from Dragon Horde Yarns just really needed a clean palette so that you could actually see the rainbow of the mohair. And I think it's just gorgeous. I think it came out really lovely. And of course the lace will open up as soon as I block it, but I wanted it to be dry to show everyone. And then I'll give it a good long soak and block it. I don't cut my ends off until after I'm done blocking and the yarn has really settled in. So there's still a few dangly pieces in there, but it'll get a nice long soak and a nice pin out on the blocking mats. And she's very excited. She's already tried it on. We know it fits. So she's very, very happy about that. Recently, after my Love Note, but not most recently, while it was still cold here, I made a stripes sweater This is the pattern by Andrea Mowry. Um, and I used a whole bunch of different hand-dyed yarns, except for this kid silk mohair. Um, Everything else is a hand dye. There are 4 yarns from Fiber for the People, and 2 of them are in this stripe. One is a fingering weight, and one is a Surrey alpaca, which I've just fallen in love with the feel of the Surrey alpaca. These more gray purple stripes in here, or grapey purple maybe, are the Surrey alpaca held double. The true gray purple at the top, and in a few other places, is just a what she calls a lucky strike. Actually, all 4 of these colors are what she calls a lucky strike, which means they're one of a kind, and it's part of her dye process. And you can check out Fiber for the People and read all about how she ends up with her lucky strikes. But I had ordered them not even all at the same time, and they sat there together telling me that they really needed to be used together. And then I happened upon the stripes pattern when I did a test knit, actually. I was able to get the stripes pattern in return for doing the test knit for Andrea Mowry, and I went ahead and pulled a few other yarns from my stash. I had leftovers from a dress that I made my daughter, and then I had, and that's Southern Skeins yarn, and they're on Etsy. And then I had this really beautiful single skein of fingering weight, and it was by the Violet Valentine. It was part of her floral series, and I loved it, and I knew it needed to be part of a garment, and it just hadn't found the right thing yet. And so everything just came together, and I have this super comfortable, snuggly, it's probably like the easiest throw-on sweater that I've made this year, because I've made a lot of sweaters that are either fitted or stylized, but this one can just be thrown on, and it's warm and snuggly and kind of wonderful. So I'm really thrilled with that, even though it has gotten way too hot here to wear it. I wanted to share it real quick. I've also done a number of socks recently, but I don't have them here to show you because they've been gifted. So I did a pair of Thanksgiving socks for my mother using some stash yarn. I'm really trying to knit from stash as much as possible, and partially being inspired to do that by the podcast Knitting Traditions. And if you are big into knitting podcasts, you've probably heard of her, but I want to work through a lot of my stash. I kind of dug through it all during the pandemic and got reacquainted with what do I have, and maybe what could I use it for? How could I be inspired to use my stash? So I've been working through some sock yarn because I have a lot of sock yarn that's just been sitting. So I used some Cascade Heritage and some Joanne Yarn Sensation Souls, I think it is called. Anyway, so these were boot socks held double, and I used US size 4 needles, and they were just a basic vanilla sock from the Thanksgiving sock recipe. And there's 3 different patterns within. If you buy the Thanksgiving sock pattern, there's 3 different ones, and this is the vanilla sock. So it just has a ribbed cuff and then plain stockinette, leg and foot. The heel was different than I had done before and added a lot more length than I expected. So I was worried that they would be too loose, actually, because they softened up a whole lot when I blocked them. But she says they fit, and she loves them, and so that's great. And then I knit my brother a pair of boot socks for his birthday using Plymouth Yarn Happy Feet, because I had so many skeins of that, and at one point I knit my husband's socks with some, and so I had bits of leftovers, and then there were leftovers from knitting my mom's socks, and then I had 2 skeins of this green that is not my color. Army green is never going to be my color. It actually makes me look really pale and terrible, and yes, I wear colors on my feet that I don't wear near my face, but I'm just not drawn to that color. But it seemed like something that my brother would enjoy. So I marled those things together and did a pair of boot socks, and I just used a sock recipe book that I have and did a twin rib or a mistake rib, one of those, and cast on, like, did a gauge swatch, cast on what it said for his size, and just went for it. And I think they came out really well, and hopefully he likes them. I think they are still in the mail, so fingers crossed he doesn't find this, but I hope that he enjoys them, and I think that they'll fit. They were so soft and felt like they would just be delicious on the feet after I blocked them. I'll try and add a photo because they really did come out nicely. I enjoyed them. And then not recently finished, but finished last spring actually, are the Hermione's Everyday Socks. And the color is not showing very well. It's showing very dark. Anyway, I'm not sure if you can see the color really well, but it's hedgehog fibers, and it's not a color that I had picked out, but it was from an exchange many moons ago. So it was stash yarn that I just wanted to use, and the Hermione's Everyday Socks had been calling to me because they were such a simple sock pattern, but gave such just a pretty everyday look. The only thing is, as soon as I finished them and wore them the first time, they developed a hole. The yarn was fine while I was knitting with it, but clearly something had gotten to it and it had some issues. So the very first time I wore the socks, a hole developed actually along the bind off. So I reinforced that and soaked them, and then I wore them again, and a hole developed at the back of the leg. And you can see I actually took my darning egg and did a full patch darn just to reinforce that back of that heel, because I hated to waste the fact that I had done all this work to make this pair of socks. And I was so proud of myself because I get second sock syndrome so badly. Like, I adore knitted socks. I love wearing knitted socks. I think they're the most comfortable, luxurious thing ever. And yet it's something that, like, everyone can use. But doing the same pattern twice in a row is difficult for me. So sometimes I have a break between, but I get second sock syndrome really bad. So I didn't want to waste all the effort I had put into these socks. And the hedgehog fibers yarn, like, once you soak it and block it, it is amazing. I mean, and it feels so good on your feet too, but it just feels wonderful. So I was not about to just let them go. So we're going to see if the darning holds, and if they develop any more issues. My next plan of action is to actually lightly felt them, and I may go ahead and do that anyway, just to reinforce them, because a little bit of light felting might keep them from developing holes as easily. And I have really tiny feet, so if they stretch out at all, a little bit of light felting will actually benefit me quite a bit. So I have those socks that I actually just reblocked and took off the blockers yesterday. A really not recent finished object, but I got out a sweater vest that I knit for my son when he was really little. And I was soaking it and reblocking it in hopes that maybe his baby cousin could wear it next winter. I don't even remember what size I made. I used scrap yarn that was in my stash already. I believe the name of the yarn was Remix, and I can't remember the brand even, but it's lightweight, it's not scratchy, it's not heavy, and it's just really cute, and I adore little boys in sweater vests. I think they're adorable, so I'm really hoping another baby gets a wear out of this, and I'm hoping actually many more babies get a wear out of it, because it's a shame to just use it once, or use it for one kid, and then put it away and never use it again. So I just really want to see it be worn. I try to only knit for people who will really use the things that I make, and not just take care of them, but like really use them. I don't want it to just sit on a shelf and never be touched because they're afraid to use it. And luckily, because we all know what babies are like. This is a super easy to wash yarn. Easy to wash, easy to dry, like no big deal. Baby gets food on it, just toss it in the wash and it'll be fine. So those are my recent finished objects, and some not so recent. But now I want to move on to works in progress because, of course, I have way too many things in progress. I had been really good about being a monogamous knitter for the last year and just working on like one major project at a time. And then all of a sudden last month I cast on 3 things at once. So I finished the Love Note for my daughter, which was one of the cast-ons. But I also have the Easy Eyelet Cardigan by Knititude. And this is a stash bussing project because I have had a bag of Nashua Hand Knits cilantro, like 10 skeins of it or more, that I bought at Eva's Needlework in Thousand Oaks back when I lived in California. So I've had this yarn in my stash since like 06 or 07. So a long time, whole bag of it. And it is a cotton acrylic blend, so it's super lightweight. It's in one of my favorite colors. I love this bright blue, but it's an Aran weight yarn, and I never could decide what to do with an Aran weight cotton blend. And I'm sure I got it for some specific project back in the day, but I have no idea what that was. So I found this Easy Eyelet cardigan that did call for an Aran weight yarn, and I thought, what if I made a cardigan out of this cotton blend so that it was more of a transitional season piece, because in Oklahoma it gets very hot, and it can get very cold, but it just doesn't do it very often. So layering is good, and transitional pieces are good because we'll have mornings that are really cold with afternoons that are really hot. So just so here I have divided for the sleeves, and I have gotten just to the underbust. And actually, because the project is eating up yarn faster than I thought, even though I have way more yardage than the pattern calls for, just because I get scared, I'm going to put the body on hold, and I'm going to go ahead and knit the sleeves. Because like I told you before, I am short. I am only 5'1", and I'm very short-waisted. I am all leg, no torso. So I'm going to go ahead and knit the sleeves to the proper length and do them exactly like the pattern calls for. And then I'm just going to go back and finish off the body to whatever length I have yarn for. If it's long and cozy, that's fine. If it's more cropped, then that's fine too, because I'll wear it either way, and I'm in love with the color. So I just need to estimate how much it'll take to do the ribbing band around, and that's how much I need to save, and then I'll knit until that's all that's left. So Easy Eyelet Cardigan by Knititude. I'm really enjoying it. It's super easy. However, I've been making sweaters entirely knit in the round for the last year, and I forgot how much I hate having to purl an entire row, like, all the time. So I'm not sure how many more cardigans will be on this year's to-do list, because all that purling, and maybe if it was a more intricate pattern and it was just a bit more interesting on the wrong side, that would be different. But also I am terrified of steeking, so that's not going to happen. But Easy Eyelet Cardigan by Knititude. The other thing that I cast on during my cast on frenzy was a pair of socks, of course, because I adore knitted socks. And I'd had my eye on this pattern. This is Clearly Determined by, I did make myself some notes, Lisa Ross. And this yarn is Living Dreams Yarns and Fibers, Galilea. And so you can see it's a speckled yarn. It's a really pretty speckled yarn, and I'm loving all the depth of color in it. However, it is probably not the right choice for this pattern because there's this really pretty braid that goes down the side that gets completely lost in the speckles. You can see the braid comes down the side, and it splits, and it goes down the side of the heel and down the foot. So It looks more like a traditional braid up here, and then when it splits, it's a twist going both directions. So the underside of the foot is stockinette. The top of the foot stays in this texture pattern, and then you've got those cables running down both sides. I will say it's the most attention I ever had to pay to a heel, since the cable does go down through the heel. And I thought it was interesting that the heel is not reinforced in any way. I'm used to doing more of a slip stitch heel, and like on the back of the Hermione's Everyday Socks, there's the slip stitch heel that kind of thickens the heel up. And this is just straight stockinette. And maybe that made it easier to maintain that cable pattern. But either way, I think it's very interesting. I've sized them for myself, hopefully. And I'm about... This is, however, the first sock of the set. So I'm going to have to talk myself into starting the second one once I finish this one. I did have to pay really close attention to the pattern for the leg because of the braids on both sides, and the braids go opposite each other, so it's not just repeating the same thing on this side as this side. So I had to pay attention to the pattern the whole time. I need to just cast on some vanilla socks, like plain old, no stitch pattern, just vanilla socks, because I keep talking myself into really pretty patterns, and they're amazing once they're done, but I would really just like to churn out a few pairs of socks for myself, although my to-do list is so long that I don't know when that'll happen. But I really like the clearly determined socks. I think they're going to be really cute. I just don't know how quickly I'll actually get the pair finished. So speaking of wanting to cast on more socks, I was thinking that I would try and do a pair for my dad for Father's Day, and I cannot decide at all what yarn to use. So it's really hard to start them. So first, and I was thinking I would do double thickness boot socks like I had just done for my brother and done for my mom, mostly because they go fast. If I want to do a single thickness, then I have this really pretty orange yarn with green speckles, and I don't have a lot of super dude-like sock yarns. I have a whole lot of pinks and purples and things that appeal to me. But this came in a mystery box, and I believe that this was the mini that was with it. So I could do this for the heels and toes. So I could put these together and do just regular socks, but I don't think I have enough of this to do double thickness, or they wouldn't be very tall if I did. The other option is I have 2 balls of this Regia, and I could do that with something, or I could just hold it double on its own. Because when I did the Thanksgiving socks for my mother, I started with a ball this size, and I didn't even finish it because I held it double with a solid blue. And I had tons left over. So I looked at the pattern, and the numbers are close, especially if I had a contrast color for the cuff and toe, or cuff, heel, and toe. And this is a really hard color to show you. It looks green in person. I know it's showing up really pinky on the screen, but like up close, it has all of this depth of color to it. And this is Heaven Sent Fiber Chameleon, which might have to do with that odd color effect, but it's a merino bamboo silk. So it's a really nice yarn to use for socks. But it could work, and it's not a color I'm ever going to wear. So it's been sitting in stash for, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Who knows? Anyway, long time. It could go with that. Or I have a mini from my advent calendar this year that is a rusty brown that could go with that. Or I have bits of leftovers, and yes, they're a mess, but I have green and blue, and these are leftover from my brother's socks. So I could find a way probably to stretch this into a pair of thicker socks. I really wish you could see the color better, because there's deep teals and greens and rust color and almost a plum color in here, but I'm not sure. Well, you can, there we go. So there's a lot of depth of color here, and it's really beautiful. So this is not a very big mini, and I wouldn't be able to, probably it would have to just be heels or maybe heels and toes. It's very small. Or the dark blue could go with it. Anyway, lots of options. I just have to talk myself into something and just go for it. Because I will run out of time if I don't. I'm not the fastest sock knitter, so it'll take me a little bit to get those done. So then I also want to talk about wanting to frog, because I have a really hard time letting go of anything that I have put time into. So last year, I put a lot of time into knitting the front piece, or back piece, because they're identical, of the Bolin shirt. And I've finally talked myself into the fact that the reason I never finished it is I didn't like the way it was coming out. I love the design. I even got different yarn to try and start again because I love the design. I think it would look good on me. It's a beautiful lace pattern across the top and then just hangs straight for a t-shirt, and it's knit in 4 pieces, but you pick up stitches to do it, so it's not a ton of seaming. And it's a really lovely pattern. It's just I started out with a yarn that is far too variegated, and it's pooling in such a way that I don't think I would ever wear it. And I'm going to show it to you. And it's nothing against the yarn dyer because I adore the yarn. I actually already found a better pattern for this yarn. I'm going to take this same yarn and I'm going to make it into, I'm going to check my notes, the V-back tee by Jamie Hoffman, because the pooling in the V-back tee, the way it is on the slant, on the diagonal, will be much more complementary and just look a whole lot better than the pooling does in the Bolin. But I have a hard time with the fact that I finished an entire front and I'm going to pull it out. And I just have a very hard time frogging anything. But the pooling just got to be too much. And first I was like, oh, vertical stripes aren't bad. But it's not really stripes. It's just terrible pooling. And you're losing the lace pattern in the variegated yarn. And it's a beautiful lace pattern. It's a well-written pattern, but it took me a long time just because of having to read the pattern constantly and not memorizing the lace repeats and stuff. But it is knit side to side in sections. So you start at the center and you knit one section this way, and then you come back and you pick up stitches along the center and you knit the next section this way. But I'm just going to have to let it go because I'm not going to wear it. I'm not going to wear it as it is. I am going to wear these colors. I love these colors. I am a bright colors person. But I think that I will actually wear them as a V-back tee as opposed to in the Bolin. And that actually helps me to segue into my stash acquisitions. I recently got a package. I say recently, but I mean, it's probably been a month, but that's okay. From the Creative Knitter. And the first thing I ordered, what drew me to her, because I had never ordered from the Creative Knitter before, she's from Canada, was the Creative Comfort collection. And it was a box set that came with this really pretty mug rug and lip balm. And I've already opened it and used it, but wool wash. I will say the wool wash, it softens knits up beautifully, and it has a lovely scent, but the scent stays. And usually I use things that are fairly unscented or where the scent doesn't linger on the garment. And this stays, and the scent stays a long time. So if you're scent sensitive, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, or I would recommend only using a teeny tiny amount. Because she has other wool wash in her shop, and the flavors sound, or fragrances sound amazing, but I just want you to know that it does stay. So if you like staying power in your scents, then definitely check out the Creative Knitters Wool Wash, because it's really nice, and all of the garments that I've used it on have just felt amazing afterwards. It also came with, and I've already used this too, so it's out of the box, this soy wax candle. It smells so good. Probably should have lit it to just help me relax while I was doing this, but it's just a pretty little tin, a lovely candle, but it was the yarn. The yarn is what told me that I had to have this. And I mean, I was ready the second it dropped in the shop. Like, I was refreshing and I was waiting, and then I was like on it because I had to have it. So here's the main skein, and it's just beautiful, and it's colors I adore, and they're calming, and they're just gorgeous. It's called Watercolor. And then here's the set of minis that go with it. Aren't they beautiful? They're just so beautiful. And I actually messaged her and said, look, I know this is a special box set, but if you have any extra, I want to buy it. And she did. So I was actually able to get 2 full skeins and 2 sets of minis, and they are going to be a garment for me. They have to. They told me that they needed to. So I've been looking at a few different patterns. But if you have a suggestion for a way to use 2 sets of minis and 2 full skeins of variegated for a pretty summer shirt, feel free to put it in the comments. This is 420 yards in each skein. And then I think that they are 20-gram minis. So I have quite a bit here. So I think that I have a number of options. If you are making a pattern suggestion, I typically knit a size medium. I have a 36-inch bust, and so I knit things usually with a few inches of positive ease, but typically it turns out to be a medium in most designers' patterns. So anyway, I adore this yarn, and I am so happy that she had extra and that she let me buy it. So that was my major stash acquisition. I've been trying not to buy too much, really. But sometimes the yarn just tells you it needs to come home with you. I don't think there's any way around that. It just reached through the computer and said, you must buy me. I was lost. I did. But since I was already shopping with her, I looked at what else was on her site. And there was this really pretty speckled yarn. And I thought, hey, that would make a much better bowline than the variegated yarn that I have. But since I wasn't 100% committed to the bowline, I went ahead and bought 3 skeins. So at 420 yards per skein, I have enough of this to do a really simple pullover for myself or a summer tee or something. So if you look really carefully, this one is called Sidewalk Chalk. And you can kind of see it's gray, but it's got all these flecks of color. Just beautiful flecks of color. It's kind of a light, cool gray. I know it looks kind of white on the screen, but it's a light, cool gray with lots of green and pink and just beautiful little bits of color, some purple in there. So I'm very excited about that as well. And then when I was in my local yarn store recently to get the Monostel Uruguay to make the love note for my daughter, my son was with me. And taking him into a yarn store can be very hard on my pocketbook because he likes to pick. And he's super sweet. Sometimes he's picking yarn for other people, and I think that that is really generous, and that thoughtful gifting should be encouraged. So depending on what he picks or why he picks it, when he gives me his reasons, sometimes I try to work with him on that. But the first thing he picked was a super expensive hand-dyed rainbow yarn that was just gorgeous by the front door, but very low yardage in each skein. Not enough to make him something. Not not anything substantial. Maybe not even enough to make him a really good hat. So I was like, well, let's keep looking. And as I was going to the checkout counter, he found what he really wanted. So he brought home a skein of this Regia, and it is quite a bit of yards. It's a DK weight. Let's see, the full yardage is 410 yards. So there's quite a lot of it. It was much more affordable than the first rainbow he picked out, but he would like a hat and a pair of socks. And I think that there's plenty of yardage in here, because he's only 6, to make him both a hat and a pair of socks by next fall, because it'll be too warm all summer. But sometime by next fall, I will do that for him, because he was so sweet about asking for it. And he did happen to find it on the sale rack, so it was a good deal. And he's just really excited. So I think it's very sweet that my kids are both at an age where they want to wear the things that I knit for them. And they even have requests and things that they would like. And I want to encourage that and hope that they don't get to the point where they're embarrassed or too cool to have things that mom made. So while they're still asking for things, I'm going to try and accommodate that the best I can. The reason I made my daughter a Love Note sweater is because she really liked mine. And it was such an easy knit. I mean, there's a reason this pattern has been made about a bazillion times. It is such an easy knit. The lace repeats go so quickly, and then the stockinette just flows off the needles. It's a great road trip project. Super quick, fastest sweater I ever made myself. So I went ahead and said, okay, I'll make you one too. And she may not get to wear it till next fall because it may be too hot for it. But either way, she is super excited to have it. So I'm trying to think if there was anything else that I had planned to talk about. I don't think so, but I just hope that if you found my little corner of the internet, you leave a comment. I hope that you enjoyed the video. I would love if you want to share with me what you're knitting, or what you're doing these days, how you're staying sane, or your favorite patterns, favorite projects, anything. Just connection and conversation and things. I mean, that's all I'm looking for, and I hope that that's what a few of you are looking for as well. I don't know if you noticed my yarn bouquet, but my husband gave me a yarn bouquet for Valentine's Day last year, and I leave some of the original yarn in there, although I knit a sweater with some of it that I'll show at some point. And I change it out seasonally now, because who wouldn't want to look at pretty skeins of yarn, right? But thank you for joining me. And I think I'm just going to go now. So, first episode,